Mm-hmm.
In addition, last night I was talking to him, and he said, you know what, I'm not going out on Thursday nights anymore. A girl I'm talking to, she and I go to the gym, not even a relationship, just talking. And I'm convinced that subliminally, they receive those messages that are negative. Subliminally, they can also receive those messages, and I may be Pollyanna or rose-colored glasses, but I do see that having an effect on him, and him allowing me to, even when his friends come over, give my little prevention spiel to them. Instead of them saying, oh, Mom, cut it out, they listen. And you know what? They will listen. And I think coaches, parents, and everything, we're just not, it's not as sexy as what's put out there in the media.
Mm-hmm.
You know, prevention and all this stuff is really not that sexy. And we kind of have to just keep plodding away with it. And I do think eventually it will start to build.
And you never know what they're picking up on or what they're hearing, or they're just certain things attach, and it stays in their short term, for very short amount of time, and unless they think it's significant, it's just lost in the shuffle. But I mean, you never know, and maybe I've always thought about it this way: if you're an athlete, you should have a lot of concern for all that time, effort, and energy, or sweat equity, whatever you want to call it, that you put into your training and trying to get in shape. And it's no different for me than watching people who will go and shop at Whole Foods and buy natural foods, and then they're going out and getting trashed on the weekend and smoking weed and stuff. And I'm going like, well, look, here's a totally healthy behavior. You're real concerned about pesticides and hormones in your milk and stuff, and then you'll go out and just poison yourself. I mean, it's like, how do these two things end up in the same universe? It's just, you either really go one direction or the other, but we got people that are living both sides of the fence most of the time. And when we instituted this just recently over at that National Sports Academy, we got kids who have an amazing opportunity to be there. But the amazing opportunity isn't there if they don't think it's an amazing opportunity to be there. A lot of them are just there. And this is the thing we're trying to work on, is to say to them, look, why don't you maximize this amazing opportunity you have while you're here? And you got to give people sound bites. That's what these are, sound bites. And you'll eventually, some of them will resonate, and you're never going to know what. It's like when I do a general prevention talk to an all-school audience. When it's over, you know what I'm saying? The same thing the people that brought me in are saying, gee, I wonder who got something out of that. But when I'm talking to athletes, if I go in to give that talk and they don't get anything out of it, then I can pretty much tell you that it's a lost cause as far as your athletes, because who wouldn't be interested in this if you were a young athlete? You'd be sitting here eating it with a knife and a fork and a spoon. This is such interesting stuff, and they don't know about this. So I just think that, that's the difference of a target audience, like athletes, versus let's do this for everybody, okay? But if you do it for everybody, there's no harm in that either, and I'll tell you why. Somebody else might do something else, and they might say, hey, maybe I'll try that. And maybe it's the sleep stuff or the food stuff or glucose or whatever, There's a lot of variability in the program. Somebody will grab something out of it. It's not like all lost. And even the parents, a lot of the parents don't know it either. Margaret, what were you going to say?
Last night, we were wondering who the kids were who were staying here. So we went up to this one boy and we started talking to him. And he lives here. He's a high school student, and he's an aerialist, and he gives a tour of the building. And the whole time he was talking about what he does and their schedule and their lifestyle. And here's a kid who's away from home 12 months a year. They get to go to school in the evening. They practice from 9:30 in the morning till 5 at night. And the glow on his face talking about this, and this is what he wants. He wants to be in the Olympics 4 years or 8 years from now, and he's willing to do all of this. And the kids, and he introduced us to the kids as we went along, and it was like, oh my God. These were like totally passionate, committed athletes doing what you're talking about.
And you can't do that sport anywhere. You have to have facilities to do it. And, here's the facilities. It's like, you want to be a ski jumper. Well, Utah, Calgary, Lake Placid, and some smaller jumps that really don't help you. So it's, you have opportunities here to do some pretty special
But
things.
to be one of 6 kids
Mhm.
picked from across the nation to do this,
Mhm.
you have to be really committed.
So that's the smaller, that's the 2% you're talking
Mhm.
about. So there's a greater percentage out there. Like when I first talked about life as an athlete to my son, his first response was, "Mom, I'm not an athlete." Because he has that image. But when I talked to him about the time that it's taking him to go to the gym for an hour, and actually, I think I told you this before. His athletic, his personal trainer at the gym, who's only in his 20s, said to him, "So you're ready to stop drinking because
Mhm.
how much you're losing?" And it was, and I actually sent homemade power bars to that trainer and said, "Thanks for keeping that message going. So it's not just me, preventionist mom,
Mhm.
from my coalition background, talking to him, so that, and like you said, if they just keep getting all those images, they're getting the other images. So who else is giving them this prevention ad?
Yeah, it's not all futile. Yeah.
One of the biggest things, and somebody who's done this for a long time, it was an AD for going on for 13 years. I was a dean of students for 4 years. And filling all of those positions, you see kids that are sometimes floundering, and mom and dad know they're floundering, but they don't know how to help, they don't know how to push. And I've often said many times when a kid's in crisis or a kid's in trouble, and they violated your code and they've done those types of things, that's sometimes when mom and dad are the closest to their son or daughter because they go into defensive mode.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden they're to protect their son or protect their daughter. And they're the closest at that time. And 2 days before that, they may not even spoke to each other for weeks. And but it's one of those things that I still see this as one of those vehicles. But we have so many parents that ask the same questions you do. And you're somebody who's sort of on the inside who sees and looks at it from a prevention standpoint. We have so many parents out there that just don't get it. And they're floundering. They want to know, where is there somebody who can help? Where is there information that can help? Where is there information I can push? And that's why I think one of the biggest things here in New York State we're trying to look at, John and I have talked about this for years, we used to call it the Parents Toolbox. And basically coming out with a program which basically was geared mainly to parents, and basically a Parents Toolbox. And one of the things we're looking at on our state website is basically having a parent section. So that's one of the things we're working on, but it's so needed.
Absolutely. All right, let's continue. One of the things that's been really now presented a lot in human performance is that there's 2 different grids for your body. One is your body systems like heart, lungs, and muscles. The other is this, which is the brain and central nervous system and that neuromuscular connection. And they're really on different time frames. Like your body can recover in 24 hours even from a hard workout, exhaustive physical stress. We know that. And when the brain gets fatigued, it can take up to twice as long to recover. And I give you an example. If you really had a lot of mental stress, sometimes you can actually go to work out and you just feel like you feel trashed. You feel like your muscles just feel like they're just not working. You just feel dysfunctional. So, we looked at like what's now, we coined the phrase central nervous system readiness. Well, you need central nervous system readiness to be able to function at a high level. And then if you look at things that affect it, they can affect it for up to 2 days. And I said, your body may be ready to compete, but your brain may be fatigued. Well, how about a kid who has great training methods, eats a good diet, all that stuff, but doesn't sleep? And the brain's just exhausted. And how many days out before a major competition can you not sleep and still function? All those things we've looked at. So we have systems now for measuring in the human body stressors and stress. And if you look over here, about at the 8-hour mark, this guy's going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. This is an elite athlete. And light blue is sleep. And if you look at red is stress. So 1 o'clock in the morning he goes to bed, so he goes to sleep. And if you look in the middle of the night, about 5 o'clock in the morning, or 5:30, just before 6, you can see stress. He got up, and probably to go to the bathroom. Anyway, then he went back to bed and he slept as long as he could. He slept till, almost till around 8 o'clock. And then he got up, and as soon as you awaken, you have stress, all right? And here was some high-level physical activity. I don't know, like it looks like he ran up a flight of stairs or sprinted or something. But here's a workout. And here's physical activity, and we can see he does a workout from 9:30 to 11 o'clock. And then all day long you have stress. And this is what I was alluding to before, is that during the day, just from just being alive and walking around and going to class, everything, you have stress and stressors that fatigue you. It fatigues your brain, it fatigues your body. For sure, it fatigues you structurally. By the end of the day, when you go to train at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, which is traditional training time for high school athletes and college athletes, you're for sure tired. I know, for a lot of you that coach, sometimes you go to practice at 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and you're tired. And it's fatigue just from doing your job all day. And you almost have to like ramp up your enthusiasm again and go, yeah, I'm dragging, man. But you're tired and fatigued. So this is a new system, and the first system that did this, the Russians came out with a system called Omega Wave, and then the Finns made a system called First Beat. And what you're measuring here to look at this is very simple. They look at the time differentials between your heartbeats, which is just pretty phenomenal. So you can tell when somebody's sleeping, there's different time differentials between their heartbeats than when they're moving or when they have normal stress or when they're working out. And so this guy got, he went to bed at 1 and he got up at 7 something, so he got 6 hours of sleep. Then he goes to do a workout, and it was a hard workout that day. It was supposed to be a max workout. It was power cleans and plyometrics, which is very demanding on the central nervous system. After the workout, they're at a rate of workout on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being optimal, maybe a 5 being medium level, and low score, low quality. And he ranked the workout at 2 to 3. So it was supposed to be an 8, a 9, or a 10. So this is where we could say to an elite athlete, well, gee, I wonder how that happened, or wonder why it happened, and use it as a tool to say, well, you have no consideration for sleeping, and your central nervous system's fatigued, and it's not going to function at a very high level to do a workout that takes a huge amount of central nervous system requirement, any more than it would be if you had a high-level skill training or sprint training or something like that day. So the human body was made to be up for 16 hours a day and down for 8. I think there's some tales from long ago where they used to say everybody needs 8 hours of sleep. I think everybody can remember hearing that from somebody in the old days. Well, we have diminished amounts of sleep now for most people. And this is that system at work. This is Omega Wave. It's a biometric system, and it really works. It's not something that's voodoo. And all top-level athletes and teams are using this all over the world. It's expensive. No one's going to afford it on a high school level, and even if you had money, it would be pretty expensive. But it proves that different things affect in different ways. So what we're measuring is the time differential between your heartbeats. So if we measured from your heart beating till the next beat, if your heart is rested, if your central nervous system is rested, these are identical. Every time differential between heartbeats is identical. And if you have any stress or stressors or fatigue or hangover or drugs or all different kind of factors, it's all random, like you cannot believe. So here's an example. This is a good month of training. This is look, from 9/11 to 9/18. Look, the guy had great training. Everything was up here. And then in the next 2 weeks of training, what happened? Well, it just started going all over the place. And it went, because it was so bad methods that this person was employing here, it doesn't even snap out of it at the end. It's still going down. All right? So these are tools, and I'm just showing you this as an example. If you really want to measure what's right and what's wrong in the human body, you can do it. Most high school kids will never have this available, but it sure explains a lot if you're trying to teach somebody or trying to teach a team. Because then you're in a whole different situation. I'm in a sport where I'm out there with this many more people, and I could be at my best because I take all this into consideration, and my teammates might say, yeah, you know what, whatever. And then you're out and playing the game. So who's at 90% of your potential, and who's at 50, and who's at 70, and who's at 60, and how does it all average out on a day when you got to play somebody? Those are the things we should be teaching. Here's another one. Here's heart rate variability. You can see it's good. And then look at this, huge drop-off. Excuse me. Huge drop-off in heart rate variability when? New Year's Eve day. Why? Take a guess. There's New Year's Eve drinking. And what this does is it totally reduces the quality of your training. Well, this is the kind of stuff you got to start sharing with people who think, hey, I can get away with this, or I can do it. Yeah, okay, do it. So there's New Year's Eve, and I just showed that to somebody, and it was just before New Year's. Here's another one. Good training methods, good quality to training with heart rate variability. It shows all. And then you see these glitches, all right? Read what it says. 10th, 16th, and 23rd, the dip from the 12th is reported caused by some other stressor, but the 10th, the 16th, and 24th was from drinking. So we show this to people now. We say, okay, well, yeah, you can do it and you can get away with it. But in the long term, look what you're doing to yourself. Just like I said before, train good for 2 weeks, then screw around for 2 weeks. What's the end product? That you didn't get any worse, but you didn't get any better? I don't know. Or maybe you did get worse. These are things we can share. So we can also look now at these different markers in training. With central nervous fatigue, if you want to measure it from power training, we can look at how hard the workout is, the magnitude of how many muscles we activate, and also how much muscle is damaged. And we now have ways to measure this. So this isn't real technical. I'm just showing this because this is something that sort of illustrates my point that people don't know everything that they need to know. So intensiveness of a workout. We have easy days, we have medium days, we have hard days. There's got to be a mix to them. We even have rest days. Any athlete who doesn't take once in a while some rest days, look up OCD in the dictionary. Come on. Your body sometimes just needs a rest. Just like an athlete has a hard day that they're supposed to do someday, and it isn't always going to be available for doing the hard day. Sometimes as a coach, you have to say, you know what, why don't we skip the hard day today and just do an easy clean out so you can recover. So here's a single muscle fiber damaged. Do you see this? And here's muscle fiber before training, after a moderate workout, after a really hard workout. This is interesting stuff. You know, if you show this to athletes, they start to get it. Yeah, they get sore. All right? Show them. It's really interesting for them to see this. And we also now have a marker that we can find in the blood from when muscle breaks down and is damaged. It's called CPK. So we also can look at how important different exercises are versus other exercises. Here's one for your weight room at the Hill Academy or Niskayuna High School or anywhere. Any place where kids are doing power training. This is every exercise we could think of that is considered in power training with Olympic lifts up here. Clean, snatch, power, clean and jerk. Here's deadlift, here's squat, and there's 3 kinds of squats, but here's squats. Here's bench press. When you do a bench press, you involve about 37% of the muscle motor units in your body. Do a clean and jerk or a snatch or a power clean, 90, 95, 100% of your motor units in the body. What dividend is it paid to do Olympic lifts compared to bench press? Is there a movement in sport where we do the bench press? Name one, right? But that's blocking, and you're right, it's this motion and this movement, but there's nothing to push off. So is it the same? Probably not. These are those things where you're really helping people. And in our super clinic, we made up this chart, and if you look, sit-ups and push-ups doesn't even get on the chart. Why? It just doesn't engage enough motor units to make it worthwhile. With young athletes, yes. A supplemental training and warm-up stuff, yeah, but not for athletes. Also, if you look right up with max motor units is maximal sprints, especially short 10-meter sprints, medicine ball throws, and plyometrics. That's huge. So here's where people should train. These are sort of like you can do them, but it's not really that big a payback. And this stuff, I should eventually erase it from the chart. But this is in so many weight rooms now, and it's so beneficial because when kids go to do this stuff, they're not wasting their time on the wrong kind of training, and they're doing exercises from the power position. What's the power position? It's your feet shoulder width apart with your center of gravity lowered. That's the position of almost all sport, not rowing. So here we go. You're in this power position, right? From this position, you can jump, you can sprint, you can do anything from that position. You can lift things. And, if you look at all sport, yeah, you're just in a lower position. But, I mean, you start thinking about this, all these exercises that pay the biggest dividends are from the power position, all right? So anyway, that's some of the stuff that we've come up with just to help people understand. But if you're going to do pull-ups, you can maybe consider strapping a truck tire with a rim on it and 60 pounds that these guys carry all the time, 60 pounds front and back loaded. Our guys over there have even, they do pull-ups with that much weight, and that's when you'll engage more motor units doing a pull-up. That's why if you were doing push-ups or sit-ups, I mean, you can get to a point where you're doing 100, then you're doing 1,000. It doesn't much matter because the plateau of the training effect from doing that kind of an exercise is real quick, all right? So we also have done a huge amount of studies on how long training should take place. Max training, high-intensity training, about an hour. Hormones peak 35 to 45 minutes into a workout. They start to diminish after 35 to 45 minutes, but after an hour, there's no hormones to make anything happen. Why are you going to continue to do more intensity training? It's ridiculous. When you do intervals or high-intensity training or weight training or sprint training, or you want to save up all the physical training part of a workout in any team sport, you got an hour curtain up, curtain down to get it done. After an hour, you're pretty much undoing what you did the first hour. So once you get people on the page that we save up all the high-intensity part of a workout for a 1-hour segment, then we go to doing other stuff, X's and O's and strategies and plays and all that other stuff. That's maximal training. We don't do this with any population anymore. And I'm talking SEALs, pro sports, any of them. That's it. You got an hour to get high-intensity training done. So once you're educated and you go through this stuff, the red zone, if you're wondering what it is, once those hormones get up to a level, at about 25 to 50 minutes, you're at the highest levels for hormonally for making training effect take place. So we usually ramp it up at about 25 minutes to 50 minutes into a workout. Pays huge dividends. And they tried also, for you coaches that are here, they tried splitting it up like 20 minutes in hour 1, 20 minutes hour in 2, and 20 minutes in hour 3. Splitting it up so you could do 3 batches of intensity during a 3-hour workout, or 30 minutes in hour 1 and 30 minutes in hour 2. Doesn't work. Hormones go up, hormones come down. Hormones in a human body will support high-intensity training for 1 hour. That's it. Go past an hour, just wasting it. So that's really interesting because when we're doing intervals or you do your warm-up, you get it all ready to go, and then sustained work. That's what it's about. So this is an interesting thing. Power training is huge, male or female. I'll just say this, females times 10. Right? You teach a female athlete to do power training and power cleans and Olympic lifts and stuff, the dividends are enormous even compared to guys who haven't done it and learned how to do them. Because guys do some strength training all through their youth. A lot of females don't. And, that's it. Olympic lifts, are they important? Some guy wrote an article saying they weren't important. They're one of the most important things you can teach. You want to watch your athletic programs go through the roof? Get a weight room and teach kids how to do properly Olympic lifts. You will watch your athletic programs go through the roof. Cody High School, they had a kid last year deadlifted 505. It's on their website. Every time kids do something amazing, they put it on their website. They had 2 kids with a run-up vertical jump, 53 inches. It's all run out of their weight program, which is before school, called 0 Hour, 6:30 in the morning. 6:30 to 7:30, 150 kids a day, boys and girls, are at Cody High School. They don't ever do their power training, speed training, or any of that stuff at practice. They've already done it in the morning when training effect is the highest. Want to hear another important concept? 7 to 11 o'clock in the morning, hormones for training at the highest levels in 24 hours. When's the best time to train? When hormones are at the highest levels? When's the best time to recover? When hormones are at the highest levels? So if you're doing high-intensity training like intervals or speed or power training, best time to do it's in the morning. It's optimal. 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, it still supports training and training effect if that's all you got, but it's not optimal. These are just some tidbits I'm throwing in from Coach's Super Clinic, just so you can see how much this could help your coaches in your school. I've been to your school before, and this isn't the kind of stuff we're talking about. Think if we had a day with your coaches, a whole day. Or when Sean Hulls is up visiting me from we do a Niskayuna Super Clinic for your coaches. Because we won't just be talking about this. You know what else we'll be talking about on the coming in the back door? talking to your team about pot and alcohol and all the negative stuff, sleep and nutrition. And that's a great way to take off the layers so that all the coaches at your school get on the right page, because they don't know all this. At 75% of your max lifting loads, you get the biggest response in human muscle. Muscle building response you get after a workout increases by 130%, not with weights at 100% of what you can lift, but at 75% of your 100%. I'm just going to give you an example, and I hate to say it, but so many people are locked in on this. Say you could bench press 100 pounds, okay? And that's your maximum. You lay on your back and 100 pounds, you just make it. That's your max. Put 75 pounds on the bar, and when you lift 75 pounds, you'll probably be able to do 5, 6, 7, 8 reps with it, depending on your muscle endurance. You will get the largest response in muscle growth from lifting 75%. Then you'll get at 80, 85, 90, 95, or 100. So why would you want to lift 100? You have to know 100 to find 75. But a ton of these young kids at your school and your school have to be lifting weights a lot at 75%. Why? They're going to get the biggest gains. So if you get kids that want to lift heavy all the time, they're trashed all the time, bottom line. Another one is this, and this is my buddy and a friend that I went to college with at that university in Finland, K.O. Hakkinen, world's authority on strength training. Largest release of testosterone of any load that you can do is at 85% of your max. So where, if you were a coach coaching junior athletes at either of your schools, USA, would you tell kids to do a whole bunch of their lifting? 75 to 85. And then you're going to have kids making huge gains. And then the roof goes up. The 100 pounds that you're bench pressing all of a sudden is 110, and it's 120, and it's 130. And then you got to move the bottom up, all right? That's stuff people don't know, but it's huge. So anyway, last but not least, and I'm going to throw this out at you. During multiple maximal anaerobic bouts of 40 to 90 seconds, it creates the greatest amount of neuromuscular damage. 45 to 90 seconds. What's the length of a shift of ice hockey on the ice? 45 seconds to a minute, sometimes as much as a minute and a half, right? So if you want to do major damage, be in a sport where the flow of the game or whatever has got bursts of energy that last that long, and you will trash yourself. That's why ball sports and team sports, where it just goes, and of course they stop once in a while. Lacrosse, of course, hockey, soccer, any sport like that where you do bursts of energy and stop, burst of energies and stop, you trash the connection between nerve and muscle and central nervous system worse than any other kind of training you could do. So it's pretty important stuff. And once you understand this, you realize the magnitude of better training methods, so you get more out of your kids. And you're not beating them up, you're having them progress. And that's interesting. So anyway, I'll skip over this stuff. That's the study that proved it. So let's go to this. Most people, when they train, are overstraining. They're not overtraining. All athletes are in an overstrained condition most of the time, all right? And when you're in an overstrained condition, you lower the quality of your ability to train. Most athletes today training at elite levels are in a constant state of overstrain. A lot of it's not coming from the training. You can have good coaches. It goes back to Joachim Cruz's statement. Where is it coming from? The other 21 hours a day that they're alone, doing things, running around, jumping from thing to thing to thing, not having enough CNS rest time. You know, think of kids who really take their academics seriously. They stay up every night till 1:30 in the morning doing their projects and their homework and all that stuff. You have at your school very hard academic track for these kids, right? Is that stress? You betcha. Add in, we want you to be really good in sports too. Is that stress? Now we got stress come from two places. Then add in some more stress, all right? It just starts to magnify. And so these are some things, really to think at. Overstrain is different than overtrain. All right, there's two concepts separated by a couple of letters, all right? But here's the issue. Overstrain means that you're pushing it a little too hard, and you might have to take more consideration for recovery and rest than when you're not. Overtrain means you've put the hurt on yourself to the level that over time, and it can be a week, 2 weeks, a month, or even the party's over, it's going to go flat and it's not going to come back for a while. This is where we see athletes that reach a peak and their performance is going up and up and up and up, and all of a sudden it goes way down. You see it also sometimes in team sports where you'll see a team playing awesome and the passing's all awesome and everything's great, and all of a sudden you'll have that game where it's just totally dysfunctional, and you're a coach and you're just going, I don't know what's going on, but something's not right here. They might have gone from overstrained into overtrained territory. And what they need at that point in time is really total rest. You know, give them some days off. And that'll snap them out of it more than doing any kind of training. And those are just things I wanted to show you about the coach's information. You had a question?
Yeah, it was back a bit. So you were saying in the anaerobic bouts of 40 to 90 seconds, it trashes the athlete neuromuscular.
Yes.
So how do you prevent that? 'Cause that's
You build in
short.
exactly. You build in shorter amounts of work with a consideration for how that CP system has to reload. Want to hear the interesting part? 15 to 25 seconds of work, high intensity work like sprints or really high output, followed by 170 seconds for your CP to reload. That's the half-life of CP. Reloading is 170 seconds. And you can do tons of them. You can do them for the full hour. Workload, rest, but you got to wait that long, 170 seconds, or they can't do more work. What happens is those high-end muscles just shut down, and then you're using your slow twitch fibers and your intermediate fibers, and you're not even training the fibers you're trying to train.
So then does your threshold go up like it does with weight training? So like
You can, what it is you
45
can,
seconds turn to 40 seconds?
if you do the long ones, 30, 40, 45, up to a minute and a half, if you do too many of those, what happens is you can do 3 to 4, and then the whole workout's over. I actually, when we get done today, come up and I'll actually show you the research about where the fast twitch shut off and then the intermediate fibers turn on, and for the rest of the game, it's going down, 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 down. And that's not what you want to see in your team, because the best team that functions is the team that is going to maintain, not have it drop out, the bottom drop out. And I'll show you the science based on it. It'll take too long to explain. Anyway, here's another one. Understanding recovery in the human body. It's a total timeline. Here's hormones when you're a kid, especially age 12 to 15, okay? The largest surge in hormones of your entire lifespan, age 12 to 15. We already missed it, all right? There's no youngsters here. Peaks at about age 23, male or female, then down it starts to come, all right? At age 50, you have about half what you had at 23. At age 70, you have about 10%. And at age 80, you have none. So you can all look forward to that. The 6 to 15, it really takes off, but 12 to 15 is the biggest. So if you're coaching kids that are middle schoolers, not only are they real fun to deal with, there's a lot of connections to other things. The changes are incredible, but also, no wonder they can handle so much stress. You hear what I'm saying? Because their body is just pumping out hormones. And, like when you go in to talk to middle schoolers, it's different than talking to high schoolers. And it's not just attitude. I mean, these kids are getting this for the first time in their life, this just skyrocketing hormone levels. And it's really different. But they continue to rise to about age 23. So for you with kids in college, mom back there in the back row, this goes on even for a few years after college, which is interesting. And then it starts to actually help calm a person down to some degree, not always. But the best years for performance, of course, can be anywhere from 12 to into your 30s at least for a lot of sports. And like I'll give you the example. 12. I mean, what is John nuts? No, but look at gymnastics. Look at some of these sports, figure skating. Lots of sports where. You ever see rhythmic gymnastics? I'll find a video for you. You might not like it or understand it or wonder why people are playing with bowling pins and balls and stuff and hula hoops, but I tell you, watch the skills. It makes gymnastics look way less skilled. And it's incredible, like the skills these people have. And the girls are young girls, and they've mastered these incredible skills. Gabby Douglas, all right, last overall gymnastics champ, 16. And when did she start? When she was 6. And here's the correlation, 10 years, 10,000 hours, whereas there's 10 years right there, 6 to 16. And she's the best in the world at age 16. So this is just something for people to know. Just like if a kid's here, are you going to be able to train him like he's here? Well, some coaches try. Is blanket training across the board a good idea? No, we group kids. You know, it's no different than grouping talent levels. I'm going to put all my good kids together. I'm going to put all my kids who are developing together. I'm going to put all my kids who really might not have the talent levels in a group, and maybe they'll bridge the gap and jump up to the middle group. Maybe they won't. You know, I mean, it's just, it depends what you're looking at. But here's the graph on morning training. Shortly after you awaken and elevate your blood glucose levels, if you don't elevate your blood glucose levels, like kids that don't eat breakfast, this doesn't go up. It goes sort of like this all day. So you elevate your blood sugar levels, your hormones go up. 7 to 11 o'clock is optimal. So not if you're tired. So you don't grow when you train, you grow when you rest. The majority of training and training effect takes place when you're asleep. Almost exclusively you grow when you're asleep. I wish that a lot more parents understood this and knew it. I wish a lot more athletes understood it and knew it. The largest release of human growth hormone, which is what makes you grow in all respects, is in 24 hours is at night when you're asleep. Okay, so if you don't want to sleep, you're wasting the ability to grow. Did you ever anybody tell you sometime in your life, if you don't sleep, you won't grow? I remember my mother saying this. I'm not going to make any comments about people who are short. So that's maybe, but here's the scoop. Also at night when you release HGH, after you're even through the growth spurt, you also maintain muscle mass or repair muscle mass. Is that important? It's huge. You're in a power endurance sport. Rowing, that's a unique sport. You know what sport I coached that had power endurance? How about cross-country skiing? How many times you double pull in a 50K? 10,000 times.
Where do naps fit in, or do they?
It's coming.
Okay.
And it believe me, it fits in.
Okay.
Huge. So one of the only tricks left in the book if you don't get REM sleep at night sleep is naps. So here's the model now for training recovery. We started out with like 7 concepts, and if you take these in consideration, you recover quicker, which increases the quality of your training. Here's the whole timeline now, 14 steps. And you guys are going to get all these. I mean, if you explain this once to your athletes in a mass setting, just to educate them, they're doing some of them. They're not doing all 14. Even elite athletes aren't. So when you show this, you go, okay, what's the most important thing right after you train? Post-training nutritional recovery, let your liver, brain, and muscles get the glycogen back. Then, non-weight bearing, support, compression suits. Right after you do a high-intensity workout, 5 to 6% recovery from wearing a compression garment. You take 5 to 6%? I will. That's huge. Give me 1%. So this is the new model for recovery. We don't have to go through it. But let's go back to this. Heart, lungs, and muscle can recover in 24 hours. Once this is tired, it will take twice as long. Where's the consideration for the brain and central nervous system? There just isn't any. The whole secret to recovery is that within an hour after you do exhaustive physical work, if you do everything right, you can get back to 70% in an hour. That's the biggest payback you got. Then it slows down. In the next 8 hours, you get back another 20%. You're 90% recovered. And then over the next 15 hours, you get the final 10%. If you don't get the full 70% in hour number 1 after you do a workout or play a game or a competition, it comes to a screaming halt. Most people get 30 to 40% recovery. You don't get any 8-hour. You don't get any 15-hour. It just stops. The next day, you have to go out and row again or play lacrosse again or do something. You're trashed, and that's another wasted day. Get me? Because you're only 30 to 40% recovered when you could have been back to 100% recovered. If you spaced out a human body to do work and recover, what's that say over 7 days? Hard day, easy day, hard day, easy day, hard day. You could have 3 hard days in a week if you wanted to. But that's it. Why? Because those other days in between, that 24 hours, what do you got to do? You have to recover. What if you get somebody that wants to do hard day, hard day, hard day? Oh, better take a recovery day now. And the hard day might not just come from the fact that you're training hard. It might come from the fact that you're living hard, or not sleeping hard, or eating crappy food hard, or whatever. So We know that after people work out, they get sore. It's called the delayed onset of muscle soreness. Fatigue presents itself immediately, all right? This delayed onset of muscle soreness presents in about 8 hours to 24 hours. When you finish a hard workout or play a hard game, after the game's over, you may be banged up and beat up, but you're not sore yet. You're just very fatigued, structurally and every other way. No fuel's left in the muscles. You feel shaky. You're right. So you're fatigued, greatly fatigued. And there's 4 levels of fatigue, but you're not sore. Soreness sets in hour, 3 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours. By 8 hours after a competition, most people are asleep. But if you're awake, you'd be going like, oh man, tomorrow's going to be rough. Any different than if we did intervals today, or you did a rowing, the 6-minute rowing max indoor test or whatever, you're going to be banged up and beat up for a while. If you recover, this dissipates. So we look at what we found is that the human body has natural anti-inflammatory response when you do really high-end stuff. It's your natural painkillers. I'm going to tell you another example, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard this. Has anyone in here ever been hypothermic? I'm talking to the level that you're like shaking and your teeth are chattering and your core temperature's dropping, all right? Guess what your body does in response to that, which is what makes you shiver. It releases what are called catecholamines. You know what they are? It's like your body's natural amphetamines. And why do you think it releases those? Because it's trying to stimulate your body, and that's what actually makes you start to shake and shiver, all right? If you've ever had hypothermia, and you may be absolutely exhausted after having it, because that's how you feel like your muscles, because everything has been just trashed from being so cold. You've used up all your energy and everything. That night, go and try to sleep. You have so much of those catecholamines in your system that you're just like, you might as well have drank 10 cups of coffee. You are just buzzing the whole night. You're just like counting the ceiling tiles, but you're not going to sleep. And I learned this once because I was in Europe and I got really, really cold and hypothermic. And my core temperature, I'm sure, was maybe even in the 80s. And after that night, I was absolutely trashed and exhausted, and I couldn't sleep a wink. I was wired. And that's from catecholamines. Well, you have an anti-inflammatory response after high levels of exercise too, and you release these things which are called cytokines, and they attach not only to sites where there's muscle damage, the majority of them attach in your central nervous system. And that's the problem. That's when the day after doing high-intensity work, those things are attached to your central nervous system, and what it basically does is it prevents your central nervous system from recovering. And this is what we're starting to understand now, is how big a hit this takes after you play the overtime game, or you do too much power training or too much speed training, or you trash your body because it wasn't ready to do that kind of training. That's what happens. Another thing we know is that for 2 to 3 hours after you train, you have a high susceptibility for sickness. There's actually a drop in your core temperature. You've heard all this. The number of athletes that don't bring dry clothes to switch into, even if you're training indoors, just bizarre. You know, you get clammy, you get wet, and you wear wet clothes, and your core temperature is already dropping, and you're so susceptible to being sick. Warning, here's a warning for all of you at this conference. There's a lot of flu going around right now, and there's a lot of colds going around now. What could we do? They're all over the building. Everywhere you go, what are you going to do? Hand sanitizer, right? You guys know this trick? You know? There's a trick too. Put some hand sanitizer on your finger and put it up your nose. Guess what it does? You know, all those germs initially start in your nose. A lot of those rhinoviruses and all that stuff, and it goes up into your nose, up into your nasal passages. Then it gets stuck in there, and then it just starts to incubate. So you can do that too. That's a trick. Just thought I'd tell you that. That doesn't need to be in the film either. So here we go. 60 minutes after you do a max training, the most important thing is the first hour. Why? Because we can get back to 70% recovered. The single most critical factor in training effect takes place in that first hour after you do a workout. So the number one factor in recovering after training is a simple thing that was discovered in the last decade, post-training nutritional recovery. You got to get a liquid form of protein into your system right after you train. Protein somehow blunts all the negative effects in human muscle and accelerates all the positive factors in human muscle. The number one factor for recovery is to get a liquid form of protein in your system right after you train. Within minutes after finishing that high level of exertion, a switch goes on, your body is looking to uptake protein. If it's not available, all the process comes to a screaming halt, right? Which is not what you want. The best thing we can take in is something that's already broken down to amino acid level. It triggers muscle protein synthesis, meaning it sets off growth factors in human muscle. Muscle starts to want to like expand and grow. It also starts the process for repairing muscle damage. The best source is whey protein. That would be W-H-E-Y, not W-A-Y. You can buy it anywhere. Whey protein is not a supplement. It is an isolate of the 4 proteins that are in milk. It's just one of the 4 kinds of protein that are in milk. And what they do is they extract it out. And you're going to hear about another one in a second. If you take whey protein right after you train, which is broken down to a amino acid level, it is very quickly uptaked and assimilated into your system and blunts the negative stuff, advances and accelerates all the positive stuff. It's very rich in branched-chain amino acids. It digests very quickly. It is uptaked in your system very quickly. It has the highest biological value. It boosts some other things that mix with it in your system, and it also has an incredible immunity-boosting function in the body. And it comes in a million flavors, and it can be mixed with milk or it can be mixed with all different other kinds of things. So that's why we take it in. Here's the science. And just, I mean, I know if you're a preventionist here, you're probably just going like, what the hell does this have to do with me? But, you know, we're trying to just show you the stuff that we could teach people that they really need to know. This is somebody that immediately after they get done with a workout takes in protein and carbs, of 75 grams of carbohydrates, but the protein is the most important thing, and I'll prove it later. Huge increase in strength, huge increase in muscle size, huge increase in muscle fiber size. Here's somebody that does it, but they wait 2 hours instead of doing it immediately after finishing the workout. Nothing, and they actually decrease muscle fiber size. Well, athletes need to see this. It's not just, hey guys, drink the whey protein or drink a chocolate milk or whatever. Problem with chocolate milk. About 16 grams of protein in chocolate milk. You need closer to 30 grams of protein. You're not going to get it, make it happen. It's something, but it's not enough, okay? And that's one of the problems. And also, chocolate milk is not broken down to amino acid level. It has fat in it. Even low fat has fat. What does fat do? Slows down, sludges up everything. So here's a damaged muscle fiber. I already told you. So here's muscle fiber before training after a medium intensity workout. See how muscle expands? Do you ever wonder why when you do a workout you get pumped? Like you'd lift some weights or you do something, you all of a sudden look like, hey man, I'm bigger, right? See Exhibit B. Next, after a really hard workout, look how trash the muscle fiber is. Look at this micro tear right here, ready to happen. Now if that doesn't repair at night because you get your HGH release, right? And you have available protein in your system, what's that going to turn into? I don't know, a torn biceps, a torn hamstring, a torn whatever. Great learning tool. So here's intramuscular damage. If you just take carbohydrates after you train, look how much intramuscular damage there is. If you take protein and carbs, this is when they got on the page and realized it's the protein. It blunts intramuscular damage by 83%. I'm going down that road. Right? I'm not going to just take carbs after I train. I'm still going to be banged up and beat up. If you take nothing after you train, maybe you like being sore. I don't know. That's not going to help you be a good athlete. It's not going to help you recover. It's not going to help you get back to being successful. So protein does some amazing things if you get it in your system right after you get done training. Right? And this is another thing. If you train twice a day, you've got to do this thing twice. We have athletes here that train 3 times a day. You heard Margaret. These are juniors that are already training that many hours a day. So new muscle mass formed. Wouldn't this be interesting? Protein and carbs, just carbs. In slow twitch fibers, about 18% new muscle mass formed. In the carb group, nothing. And in fast twitch fibers, 26% new muscle mass formed. And in the carb group, nothing. So remember I said it sets off growth factors? The growth factors are from the protein also. If you want your gains, here was the old days. Ready? When I grew up. You did a warm-up, you did your workout, you did a warm-down. Want to hear step 4? When I'm done with my warm-down, I'm going to get nutrients in my body. It's the biggest thing we got. You'll get your 70% in hour 1. You'll get 90% by hour 8. when you're sleeping probably at night, and next morning when you wake up, you're ready to train again at a very high level. If you're not doing this, and lots of your athletes aren't, and they learn to do it, they'll tell you, I cannot believe how good I feel. That's it right there. It's pivotal. And so it's not a matter of when, it's just as important what you do as when you do it, as quickly as you can after your workout's over.
Since you were kind of downgrading the viability of chocolate milk,
Mhm.
is there a product that you would recommend that you feel accessible? I mean, you can't have kids mixing stuff in school right after the workout. That's just not convenient for them.
Yeah, Cody and Pinedale and Barrington, you know what they did? They bought shaker bottles for their kids, and a lot of kids just mix it with water. Some kids will bring their bottle with like already mixed juice. Some kids mix it with juice. Some kids, a lot of kids like in sports, like where you want to get big and remain big, like football and those sports, they will actually, a lot of kids will mix whey protein and milk. But you're also going to have kids get fat over time.
So taking the protein after your workout, regardless of the intensity?
Have to. Because there's intramuscular damage from doing it, even from doing easy exercise. I'll give you an example. I was running intervals. Yeah, it's way more relevant and important because there's more intramuscular damage. But if I go for a 30-minute run, there's still intramuscular damage. And what you want to do is just, if you have it available, you're blunting the negative, you're accelerating the positive. So you just want to do it anyway. Now, if you do a really like a secondary training and it's just a workout for a clean out or just a 20-minute easy jog or something, you can do half the regimen. The take-home message is this: as soon as you're done training, drink or eat something sweet so you get a sugar high. You want a sugar high after you're done. Why? Because your body will dump insulin. What's the number one factor in your muscles uptaking fuels? Insulin. If you don't get an insulin release, your muscles will very slowly uptake the protein you put in, but it won't suck it up. You get an insulin release first, what happens is this. Just like a dry sponge sucking up a flood of water on this counter, your muscles will just suck up fuels. And what it's going to suck up is not only the 75 grams of carbs that's floating around your system now, it's going to suck up the protein. So you got to get an insulin release first. So drink or eat something sweet, doesn't matter what it is, and then wait 5 minutes. You'll get the insulin release. Then take in about 12 to 16 ounces of whey protein. If you want to use chocolate milk, you can, but it's not enough grams of. We have state athletic associations now, and this came out of this research, that are milk sponsors and hopefully low-fat milk. And that's now New York State and a whole bunch of other states. When I was in Wisconsin, what did I say? Aren't you guys the dairy state? Come on, call up these guys. You can get. So they put the milk machines back in schools and in athletic departments. Cody had, and I went down there, they had those Nestle chocolate milk machines with every flavor that they make. And the interesting thing about Nestle chocolate milk, like there's strawberry and banana and cookies and cream. You don't have to put those in there. But anyway, they had all these different flavors. But when I actually read the ingredients, they're plenty sweet to give you the sugar high while you're drinking the milk. The problem is you're drinking 16 ounces of something that doesn't have enough grams of protein in it. So it's not gonna. The most important thing's not there. About 16 grams of protein, about half what you need is in the chocolate milk. So you want to drink 2 of them, what are you going to also get? You're going to get fat from eating it, and you don't want to see kids, their diets are bad enough now with fat. So I just give you guys the caveat is that it's whey protein. And you can mix whey protein. If you think about kids, if they get conscientious enough about this, they can mix up a shaker bottle. Cody and Pinedale gave their kids, and Barrington gave their kids shaker bottles with it's got that little metal ball in there. And the kids mix them up and they bring them with them to practice. And a lot of these kids, they mix it with juice, like Minute Maid fruit punch and vanilla whey protein. And you shake the thing up and it looks just like a breakfast smoothie or something. And it's not going to go bad because it's fruit juice, it's not milk, it's not going to get warm and disgusting. And whey protein mixes with anything. You can mix it with water. And these kids, when as soon as they're done with their workout, they drink the thing and then they take it home, and the next day they bring their juice in it and it's all ready to go. And the fructose that's in the juice also gives them the sugar high all built into one drink. So it's an interesting concept, but I mean, you can see the importance now of telling a kid or showing them why. We cannot take the shortcut of just saying, do this. They're not a golden retriever. They're a young athlete, and if you explain why, they'll care more about doing it than just somebody told me. Or, hey, I heard that you drink chocolate milk. Okay, well, you heard it, but do you understand why? And it's no different than impressing upon a kid something about why not to do a negative, or why to get at least 8 hours of sleep and push it towards 9:15. I don't know. Question? Somebody over there? Yeah.
How does the 4-to-1 ratio fit into it?
You know what? You have so many different. You're going to have guys that are on the football team that weigh 250, and you're going to have a gymnast that weighs 82 pounds. So I mean, we went with grams, grams. And it's more effective. Otherwise, you're going to have people exceeding, and people that don't understand grams per kilo. All the research was in kilograms, and it was easier to explain it in the Power Back diet, and it's in there. Just like how to put on mass is in there, which is another really important thing for kids who think that eating more meat is going to put on mass. That's like the dumbest thing you can do. So brain-body connection is the next area. And one of the things we know now is that the number one factor in athletic performance after you're in shape is this connection between brain and muscles. And the best term for it is called central nervous system readiness, the single biggest factor in optimal performance. I can't give you a checklist and leave this off because it's the most important one. It's at the top of the list. Yeah, go and get in great shape and eat good foods and have your muscles all fueled up and ready to go, but don't sleep the night before a game. Is it going to affect you? Yeah, it's going to affect you. Is it going to affect your reaction time? Yes. What does reaction time show? It shows how long it takes a signal to get from your brain down to your hand when you're like on Jeopardy. Do you ever see guys on Jeopardy playing Jeopardy, and they go like this, and they somebody gets it before them, and the next answer they know the answer, and they go like this, and they miss it again, and the third time, and the guys start looking at their clicker thinking it's not working. Somebody's just faster than you, man. They got some sleep. So here's the scoop. Reaction time shows how long it takes to send a signal. So we looked at reaction time, and another thing that they found out is that when you're fatigued, it's not just your muscles and your heart and lungs that are fatigued. Always what happens? First, your muscles will become fatigued. Why? Because of lactic acid and end products of high-end metabolism, right? In the absence of oxygen. But then after your muscles are fatigued, what happens? Then your heart rate actually maxes out, and your ventilation maxes out, and you hyperventilate. So that's your central system fatiguing. But we also know that the brain has a lot to do with that. And somebody has probably said to you before, the brain will want to quit before the body has to. Well, we know that. That's for sure. People who are ready to quit when they could keep going. People who just say, I can't do this. And a lot of it has to do with your pain threshold. You got young kids who haven't yet developed a pain threshold. And when it gets hard and it gets hurting, they just back off. And it's really unfortunate when you're in a sport like rowing, because there's a whole bunch of other people that are still trying to crank it out. And it's like having... in a lot of respects, it messes up the pop, because you end up with it affecting the whole meters per second or whatever you want to measure for speed. But fatigue originates in the brain. It's not that the signals get there and the muscles malfunction. It's the signals don't get there, or they get there randomly, or there's a breakdown in the brain. So we started looking at what fatigues the brain, and I guess one of the best things I could say is to get people to appreciate it just like this, that you can drain your brain's energy. And the best analogy I think there is that the brain is like when it's charged up, it's like charging up your iPhone or your iPad or your batteries. Your brain has a lot of charge. It lasts longer, it functions at a higher level, and it's good to go. When your brain is already run down and you start your day, that's those kids I see at school, and even with their posture, I just see they're trash, they're dead, they're exhausted. And this is connected to some other syndromes, which we will discuss. Like, for instance, fatigued kids, they're not going to just suck it up and accept that I'm going to be tired for the next 16 hours that I'm awake, and then get some real sleep for 8 hours. What do? Energy drinks. 350 kinds, right? Why do kids self-medicate with energy drinks? They're fatigued. They're tired. So there's another evil of our society. Kids have learned that, okay, well, I'm just tired, so I'll use stimulants. And they think that that works, but all it does is it gives you an energy spike, and you sink into a deeper deficit in CNS fatigue. And then you get an energy spike and you sink into a deeper deficit. So that's got to be taught too. This is an early picture of brain science. It's a hysterical picture. All I can think of is a cow milking machine and putting it on a kid's head. But this is an actual brain machine that they made back in, I don't know, the 20s. And look at the poor kid. He knows it doesn't work. But so think about this. We've come so far now in brain science. It's just amazing. And, if you want to look at a healthy brain or a damaged brain, or if you want to look at brain development, studies have been done that prove this. And one of the biggest perspectives that we don't have in adult populations, and this goes to parents of athletes or parents of anybody, is that parents don't realize how long this project goes on and when the project is over. The biggest growth periods, and what you're watching here sped into a matter of seconds, is a brain from birth to age 21 reaching greater and greater levels of abilities and functions and capacities for everything. Cognitive function, all your thinking skills, processing skills, emotional controls, and all these things. But also this, skill development. Did you guys realize that an athlete's skills continue to develop and refine and get better up to age 21? That's the truth. So you could be done with college and be an awesome lacrosse player and be one of the best in the game and play for an NCAA championship at age 20, and you got another year left where you can actually make your skills better. The window for opportunity for skill development in a skill-based sport especially is up to age 21. That's huge. And a lot of people, what do? They master a skill and then they stop practicing it, or they master a skill and once in a while they go back and practice it, or they master a skill and they realize that if they don't practice it all the time, it's not going forward. So that's important. 3 biggest developments of brain in your lifespan: birth to age 1. All right, let's face it, you come out into the light and initially you're just gathering intel. You're like, what the heck is this, right? And you've come out and you have to learn to use your senses. So that's sensory development, all our 5 senses, and unless you have the 6th sense. Then from age 1 up to about age 12, huge amount of your development is motor skills, learning to use your body for movement. So pivotal in athlete development, especially, I'm going to say, age 8 to age 12, 8 to age 13, depending on male or female. So much has to be done with movements, fine movements, repetitive movements. If you read Talent Code, which you have, practicing a skill dead slow and then faster and faster and faster. But if you learn to practice it fast with impatience and impulsivity like we have in our society, you'll have kids who have crappy skills and they just practice them faster and faster and they just get cruddier, or they reduce the efficiency the faster you go. So that's huge. Also, we know now really from 1 to age 3 is about the most important time to develop language skills. Much harder as you get older. And then the last phase of brain development, age 12 to 21, hormonal onset to age 21, higher cognitive function, skill perfection, and efficiency. Skill perfection, skill innovation, meaning you do something different than anybody else does it, or you've got your own, your own idiosyncrasies to skills that other people don't have. So think of that. Up to age 21, so I always say people, keep practicing hard your skills up to age 21. 95% of the human brain is wired by age 6. That's the truth, but it does continue till age 21. Age 4 or 5, age 12 or 13, age 21. Yellow or orange, brain development. Oh my goodness, look from age 12 to age 21, how much yellow is coming into the picture. Last and most important phase of brain development for all mature adult skills, cognitive skills, finishing touches, icing on the cake, whatever way you want to say it, 12 to 21. Mess with it during 12 to 21, it's not going to happen later. That window closes at age 21, and after that, that's what you got to work with. Another thing that came out of the studies with athletes, skill development goes on till age 21. Huge. I deal with these pro players, If they're young, I try to remind them, guys, keep it going. You want to hear an example? I guess I could give you 2 examples. You've never ridden a bike until you've ridden a bike. Is that a true statement? You've crashed on a bike, you've fell off a bike, you've, crashed and burned, whatever you want to say. But once you integrate the balance and the pedaling and all that, and you start going, and your mom or dad lets go of the back of the seat, and you get it, you got it, right? And then you remember that feeling. How about this? Anybody in here fly fish, right? Well, you can get a rod and start hooking yourself in the back of the head, or once you learn to do it, you never forget how to do it. And even if you don't do it for 10 years, can you ride a bike if you haven't ridden a bike in 10 years? Yes, it comes back like that. It would be the same as any skill you could learn in sport. Think of dribbling a basketball. How hard it is to learn to dribble basketball, and then after you learn how to do it, you could pretty much do that and 5 other things at the same time. You learn these skills, you master the skill, it goes to a part of your brain, it's cataloged, it's there. You just have to only revitalize it and re-practice it. It comes back like that. So that's important for athletes. But here's one of the ones that came out of these studies, and these were done at UCLA Brain Science Center. If you damage the brain from anything during the time frame of 12 to 21, the damage will be the greatest amount of damage you could possibly have done. It is the window of opportunity for damage that will put the biggest amount of damage. Highly susceptible, the brain is highly susceptible to damage from age 12 to 21, more than any other time frame you could pick to damage a brain. Meaning, I'll give you an example. Smoke a lot of weed, drink a lot of alcohol, get a bunch of head injuries, get a bunch of concussions. You all know the incredible awareness now on concussions, especially during age 12 to 21, right? And multiple concussions, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, all right? Get a whole bunch from 12 to 21, you're going to do some serious damage, and a lot of it will probably be unable to be repaired. Even though the brain has high levels of plasticity or repair potential at that time, 12 to 21, you don't want to damage the brain. So parents need to have this information, because there's lots of parents that think, come on, kids get into weed, kids get into alcohol. All right, when are you going to pull the plug on your kid when he gets his 6th concussion, 10th concussion? You've seen some of the stuff that's come out of this. So let me show you a couple things that are interesting. This is the Human Connectome Project. It's brain circuitry, and I really looked through this with a fine-tooth comb. You can look at brain development studies. They're interesting. The thing that blows me away is when you look at the actual circuits and how we're starting to understand how does the brain communicate with other parts of the brain. Like the thinking part's this little tiny thing right behind your forehead, and that's got to somehow have these pathways to talk with the visual cortex is back here. Pre-movement and movement are behind the thinking part up here. That has to communicate, right? Somebody's coming towards you and you're on defense. You got to decide which way they're going. You got to decide when you're going to pass or when you're going to take the shot. All of these things. Somebody's going to shoot a takedown. When are you going to drop your center of gravity and go? You're waiting for the gun to go off and you're a sprinter. When are you going to take off out of the blocks? That's the thinking part, waiting, and then sending the signal, okay, fire it up. So look at these pathways. And these aren't like an artist's depiction. These are the actual circuits in the brain. It's just amazing stuff. So why I'm showing this and why I put it in my program is just to give parents and kids a perspective on this is so beyond belief. It's the greatest thing that there is the human brain. And they can do all the studies they want. They'll never figure it all out, from the milking machine to the stuff we're doing to make these studies. But it's just amazing stuff, and somebody ought to see it. The surface area of the 100 billion nerve cells in your brain would take up 4 football fields. So when I give you in the next couple of days the Life of an Athlete flash drive that I can't hold up because it's in my computer right now, when I give you that Life of an Athlete flash drive with 15 years of materials and thousands of posters and PSAs and articles and research and all the studies and all these film clips of and examples of the programs and all that stuff, that's on a 4 gig flash drive, 15 years of my life. Now we're going to have to go to 8 gigs, by the way. We filled this up. Think of this. Just think of this. Your brain makes that look like a toy. It would take up 4 football fields of circuitry. I ought to get a picture of 4 football fields filled with 4 gig flash drives. So anyway, they generated a video, and it says play video clip, so this will take me 1 second to show you. and there's no sound with it, so that's good. But here is what the heck? That's not working. Maybe I can just hit play. Play. Nope. Okay, guess we're not showing you now then, because it's something with my settings has changed for some reason. Don't know what it is. Anybody want to come help me? Maybe one of our IT people.
Recommended settings and then finish.
I don't think it. Maybe. Thank you. Hope I didn't just change everything, but it just did something. Here we go. Thank you. If it plays. Yeah. Best thing I've ever seen, and I show it on code nights to parents because I want parents to see it. I want everybody to see it. This is 8 million, only 8 million of your 100 billion nerve cells firing during physical activity. So when you're out playing your game, lacrosse, rowing your sculls, taking a slap shot, doing whatever you do in sport, can you imagine how amazing the human brain is? And the Human Connectome Project is going to actually have a video that's going to show these waves of activity with the entire shooting match, and that's what they've been working on for over a decade. Can you imagine how absolutely incredible the human brain is? And to not have a perspective for taking care of it, you can actually see these energy, these are all, as the colors change, that's the activity levels are over here. And what parts of the brain are having those happen. But it's fission. Can you imagine like kids not having any concern for what they do to their brains, or trash in their brains, or not sleeping and the next day thinking how much less activity there is in the brain because that's what you have, or using depressant drugs. Think of using depressant drugs that shut down brain activity, pot and alcohol. Think of using stimulants. Caffeine, nicotine. Think of how many athletes in lacrosse, hockey, wrestling, all those guys that chew all the time, and how much that just uses up all those neurotransmitters. And then when you go to do your sport, where are they? They're used up. You're in deficits. So that's some pretty cool stuff to see, and thank you for the advice on that. Anyone have any questions about that and why we would show it?
You know what? I just want to say that as much as the brain's laying down those pathways to learn those skills, drugs and alcohol, you put that in there, and that's what we tell parents. Then they're laying down those pathways, and it hijacks the brain because it actually uses up even more and likes it even more than the natural stuff that is produced.
Yeah.
I know oftentimes when I told your parents, that's what we tell them. That brain is like a computer. Like, would you spill Coke on your computer? Would you drink coffee on your new computer? You take care of it. And so I've told my sons that if you keep relaxing by, and I'm not saying my sons are this way or that, but
Yeah.
I tell them, if you relax and teach your brain having a drink or whatever is the way to relax, how do you think you turn that switch off? Because my son used to say, well, I'm not going to drink when I have kids. And I used to say, that's when you're going to want to drink the most.
Yeah.
So,
It's a great.
it lays down those pathways, and it's why they call addiction a pediatric brain disease now.
Reward pathways. You're rewarding your brain by using those substances, and once you put it in there all the time, it's no different than this. Look at people who chew. How many athletes chew? And it's baseball, wrestling, notorious in lacrosse, hockey, ice hockey. All these years I've done tests on hockey players. I'm on the ice, and there's just brown. It looks like grasshoppers spit tobacco all over the ice. The whole gist of using a stimulant like that is that your brain gets these mini energy spikes all day long, and every time you put that stuff in your mouth, you're giving your brain, you're using up CNS energy and CNS readiness for nothing that you don't have when you go to do something like be an athlete or play a game or whatever. Your brain's at deficits all the time. So just, and it's a great analogy. Under the highest levels of fatigue, it starts to come unglued. You can't hold it together. So, two parts of the brain. The thinking part of the brain is very small. Some people, it's even smaller. That's a joke. But here's the deal. The thinking part that processes and really does the job, even for sport, is very small. Think of sport like there's two parts of the brain that we need for sport. We need to send the signals from our brain in the motor movement and pre-movement part of our brain down our spine vast distances to do what we do, you know? And it's your biomechanics. It's actually to make the movements happen. It's reaction. Then there's all these brain activities that just basically happen up in the frontal compartment, the processing of information that's coming in real quick, all right? Emotional regulation, meaning keeping your cool, not like the pro football player after the game the other day. Relaxation. Do you play better when you're relaxed? Do you compete better when you're relaxed? Right. Not too relaxed, right? You'd be asleep. All right. Pattern recognition, spatial recognition or spatial reasoning, visualization, imagination. Do you have to have imagination? Yeah, you got to think, okay, what can I do that opens up a play, a strategy, whatever. What zone is not being covered? Reaction, anticipation, focus, concentration, high-speed decision-making, focus, refocus. That's ongoing, focus, refocus. And then attention arousal. Okay, I'm too excited, I'm not excited enough. Right? Or you're going so crazy that it does you in. Right? You're so jacked up that like that guy was after the game. I don't know. So these are just things that are all happening up here. That fatigues the brain. Those things are a huge requirement by itself. So here's the other part. I'm glad you said it because it's just like Joaquin Cruz setting me up for my talk with what do you do in the other 21 hours. Nerve cells have to have the liquid connector, dopamine and serotonin. So pivotal to training and nobody knows about it and no one's connected the dots, so here's the dots. Serotonin and dopamine are the neurotransmitters that basically control two things. One of them is your mood, the other one is your motivation, all right? The other is how your brain will function to send signals. So, energy drinks are not a good thing, but we have a generation of kids that are raised on them, and they get on them real early in the curve. Let me ask you a question. We have some coaches here. How many coaches have seen an athlete using an energy drink? Would you raise your hand? Okay, you see it, all right? And when you see it, that's another great, incredible opportunity for a coach to say to an athlete, I need to talk to you. And you need to bring them, and we've made a whole curriculum for this. It's called Behavior of Concern Process, a 7-step process. And you have to take the kid aside, usually so that he doesn't feel like, you know, you're doing it in front of everybody. You just take him aside, and you say to him, hey, man, what are you doing drinking that stuff? That's not for athletes. And then you tell them those negative effects. Do you realize that that's a totally unregulated industry? No one even knows what's in that. They don't even have to put all the ingredients that are in that on the label.
And then just when you're saying that, it also goes hand in hand with parents and education too. Because both of my kids play sports.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, this was a number of years ago, my son was probably a pee-wee sport, maybe a pee-wee. And you had one of the parents, one of the parents giving their kids,
Mm-hmm.
the energy drink because of oh, he's going to have an edge on, he needs that to, you don't need that, right? He's, what was he, 11, 10?
Yep, and here's a great story. This town hosts a thing called Can-Am hockey. It's huge. I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of games. Every weekend, parents bring the little pee-wee hockey guys here to town. And a lot of them are the parents who think that their kid's going straight from pee-wee hockey to the NHL. And so they bring them here, and they play very serious, structured games. And some days they play multiple games, I think. And when it's over, they go back and they really have the cart in front of the horse, in my opinion, for the level that these kids are traveling all over the universe to compete when they're 10 or 11. But here's the bottom line. A coach up there walked into the locker room with a tray with Dixie cups, the little mouthwash Dixie cups filled with Red Bull, and took it to the kids, 10 and 11 years old, and said, hey guys, you drink this just before you go on the ice today. You'll play like you can't believe. Now think of a coach that's with 10 and 11 years old that should literally be fired on the spot for doing that would make a kid think that that's got anything to do with the game he's about to play. And then think about a young kid who becomes dependent on his Red Bull at 10 or 11, and now what's next? What's next on the agenda? It's just absurd. So let me just tell you that we've looked at this, the effect of stimulants when your brain is fatigued. All right, let's not look at the effect of stimulants while your brain is rested. and I'm going to give you guys the straight and narrow on this now. I have no problem saying this to anybody, including kids. It is a known fact that minimal amounts of caffeine in sports will provide a significant positive effect on the effectiveness of neuromuscular function. There's no question. And you know what I mean by a minimal amount of caffeine? The equivalent of 1 to 3 cups of standard regular coffee, not espresso. Now I won't tell that when I'm teaching stuff, but if somebody says, well, I heard, there's tons of studies that prove that if you use a little bit of caffeine, and athletes have a limit on coffee that comes out to somewhere around 6 cups of coffee. All right? And if you go past that, you would test positive, you'd lose your medal and all that jazz. So you can't lie to people. You have to say, okay, there is, if you use caffeine, but it's not just caffeine, it's all kinds of stuff that's in these things. So what I'm going to teach you right now is something you just mentioned, and then I think we'll actually take our lunch break, and those guys are coming to have lunch with you at between 12 and 12:30. We can maybe go Q&A after this. Here's the nerves, and they don't touch together, and you all know this, that the neurotransmitter makes the connection that you send. And so this is interesting. We've got 2 things up here. We've got some depressants on top, meaning if you take these substances, it depresses brain activity. Wasn't the video from Human Connectome amazing? And you'll have that video to show. Look at this fission. Oh my God. Take pot or alcohol. Well, guess what happens to the fission? I can't wait till they develop something for that. That'll be the great teaching tool. Lights dimmed. I don't know. So when you use marijuana, and let me just say this. I always say to people, it's a 3-letter word that's not used very much, but it's sure a pretty powerful word. It begins with a J. Anybody know what it is? An emotion. Joy. Absolute, beyond happiness, joy. Something that happens to you where you just you just get this feeling like that's beyond, you feel it a few times in your life, even if you're a joyous person. It's just something that's like just elevating, and you just feel this joy. And you know what happens when you have joy? You release so much of those neurotransmitters that your body just goes, holy, it's amazing feeling, all right? And so I always say to people, take joy and then compare joy times 100, joy times 225, then switch to stimulants, joy times 400, joy times 500, nicotine, joy times 700, methamphetamine, if you're stupid enough to ever try it, joy times 1,000. After you've used those substances, it's not like they reboot. They're gone. Ecstasy is another great example. They say may even be higher than methamphetamine. So think about that. Studies they did on people that used ecstasy, where they found up to 7 years later, the levels of those transmitters were still not back to normal. 7 years later. And then think about this. Think about somebody who smokes weed all the time, and everything's turned down. Their emotional range is turned down. Their spontaneity, their excitement, their spunk, everything is turned down. It's just, it's not the kind of drug, because it's a depressant drug, after you use up those neurotransmitters, they're not there to use anymore. So what it does is, it takes off the edge, but it also takes off your full normal range of function. And you start thinking about, how do people get addicted? Well, they feel this feeling, and they want to feel the feeling. And they don't feel joy anymore. They just feel being high, or they just feel being drunk, or they just feel taken off the edge when they get home and they drink their 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 beers. That's the problem right there. And it's so easy to get caught up in these top 2 because, like I said, it has a biphasic effect. These are depressant drugs, but what do you first feel when you take alcohol? Do you just drink alcohol and you feel worse? No, first what do you feel? First you feel an elevating, lifting factor, meaning it reduces your anxiety. It makes you actually flood these neurotransmitters, so you feel first, hey, oh, Jesus is awesome, we're partying, we're having a great time. But what happens after a certain point in time? It reaches the top, 3 drinks, 4 drinks, 5 drinks, 6 drinks, 10 drinks, down it goes. How do you feel the next day? There's nothing left. The neurotransmitters are just trashed the next day. So this is the chemistry. So think of a kid who chews. Now let's talk a stimulant. Or a kid who drinks energy drinks all day. You're using up all the nerve transmitter substances that make your brain have activity. How are you going to use your brain when you go out to do your sport? Or if that's the way you're doing it and you're still pretty good or whatever, how much better would you be if you had all these reserves of that stuff? That's the kind of stuff we got to start discussing with kids. Because there's a whole bunch of kids, and you know what they're using those substances for? I don't have energy, I'm fatigued, I'm tired. Okay, I'll use a stimulant. That's self-medication. I don't like being stressed. I have all these anxieties. Okay, so I'll smoke a joint or I'll drink alcohol. And they don't even have any concern now, a lot of them, for when they do it. What's the percent of kids that use these substances at school? Or on school grounds, or on a school trip, or whatever. It's escalating. It's becoming more and more and more regular. I'm just gonna tell a story without any names, and just I want you to listen to the story. Some prevention people did a very innovative thing. They basically put out on tables at a school for a week, like white paper, like macaroni grill, and some markers. I guess I don't know exactly how it was gathered, and you could go by and you could write on that thing anything about the drug culture at that place during the school week for, like, I don't know, some days or a week or whatever. They let kids just write about the drug culture at the school. And then they took all the diamonds out of the coal pile, and I guess there was probably, you got to probably have some ground rules, like, you know, you can't put obscene stuff or you know, stuff about other people. But anyway, I guess the mad and sad kids or somebody manned the table, and they got all this intel. And it's not just intel, it's a reflection of the drug culture at the school. So as I remember it, and I have a pretty good memory, here's some of the ones that came out of that. I could buy any drug that I want in 15 minutes or less at this school. Kids bring drugs to school, kids sell drugs at school. I get high in my car every day at noontime. I go to my friend's house every day at noontime. We drink a 12-pack, then we go back to school. This was the disturbing one. When I was 15, I went to a party and I drank for the first time and smoked pot for the first time. And I had sex for the first time. It wasn't just with one person. I wish I could change that now, but I can't. So that was read to a bunch of parents on a code night before the code night began by the mad and sad kids that had gathered and garnered that information from a school. And I watched parents that had gone to work all day, and now they were made to go to a mandatory seasonal meeting. I watched them sitting back in their chairs. They were structurally fatigued from their work all day. And they were tired from being at work, and now they had to go to this meeting they didn't want to be at. And I watched those parents go from sitting back in their chairs and slouching to sitting up to getting wide-eyed to getting really pissed. And then the comments started. One guy stood up and said, "Where are these kids? We need to arrest these kids." Right? That's a brilliant one, but there's a reaction. Another one, what kind of a school are you running? Something to that effect. And here, guess who's up in front of the school when this is going on? The kids were there, I think, or they had sat down by now, but they kept coming around in a line, these kids reading these things off 3x5 cards. It was powerful stuff. The superintendent and the principal, I think, were up there. It's two administrators, and it got sort of hostile. And all of a sudden, I just was like, it was getting bad. The parents were actually standing up and getting riled up. So I said, well, that's enough of this. So I was the guest speaker, so I just got up and I walked up to the front and I go, "Hey, I'm your guest speaker for tonight." And I said, if you're angry about this, I said, that's awesome. I said, because that's the way these kids nowadays are living their lives. And I said, maybe now you can see the value of coming to talk about something like this, because I said, this isn't just the culture in your school. This is the culture that's going on in a lot of places, and not just with kids who are messed up. This is the culture that's going on with a lot of kids who are athletes and are highly motivated, and a lot of them are highly functional. I said, so if you're really angry right now, I said, that's awesome. Why don't you join the people who are trying to do something about this and change it for your kids? And I think some of you in this room probably heard that talk and were there that night. So here's how it goes down. I went up to speak at that point in time, and I said, this is just today. This is just society, and this is where we've gotten to, that our kids now need this. And they don't just need it on weekends, on a Friday or Saturday night. A lot of them need it every day. That's how they function. And that's what's wrong. And that's an eye-opening experience right there. And that's one of the most powerful things I've ever seen that came from kids that's used in prevention that ought to be done a lot of places to wake people up. And that was a great way to start that code night. It was wickedly powerful. And I guess my reason for telling you that is they don't know this stuff. Or if they know it, a lot of them even look the wrong way. They just think, we all did that when we were kids. Yeah, maybe you did. But you probably didn't start it as early, and you probably weren't doing it as much. There's two other ones. And you probably weren't getting messages all the way up to the President of the United States telling you that it's okay or it's not that bad. So these are some of the problems that we're facing with kids. It's legal in some countries now. I think the jury's pretty much still out on where's the research of how good or bad or otherwise this is. People are more concerned with how much money they're going to make off it. So we got a lot of things to overcome for kids. You've got athletes who, as a absolute fact, you cannot put out on any playing field in any sport if you know that they have used those substances. Why? Because you have liability. You have to, by law, ensure the health, safety, welfare, and well-being of people engaged in high-level physical activity, all the way to the $15 million lawsuit you're going to get if you put that kid out there and that's in his system and he breaks his neck. That's it. So can a kid use pot or alcohol and be a student athlete? Absolutely no way. That's a responsibility. And you know what's going to come up now that they wanted to go down this road? We're going to have drug testing for athletes. And it's going to get instituted, I guarantee it, without any question, because it's going to be legal. It's going to be legal. And that's going to ramp up how many kids do it. There's no question. Anybody think otherwise? It's not going the other direction. We're basically now, you guys probably don't know this. The standard for testing for World Anti-Doping Agency, marijuana's on the list, was 15 nanograms. Do you know what 15 nanograms comes out to? Secondhand smoke. You're in a car with guys smoking weed and you breathe the smoke that's in the car. You will test at about 15 nanograms. The most famous example of that is that the guy from Canada that won the first Olympic medal in snowboarding tested positive at 17.8 nanograms. And it was secondhand pot smoke. And they took away his medal, but then they gave it back because they said pot's not a performance debilitating drug. Although it was on the list, I'm not going to argue about that. I'm not going to get into a philosophical dispute about it, but I'll just say this. That's 15 nanograms. That's where the limit was set. World Anti-Doping Agency just raised the level to 150 nanograms. Not 50, 150. You know what that means? Athletes can now smoke marijuana. Plain and simple. And you know what I think the NCAA is going to do? The same thing. And USADA and everybody else. You know why? They don't have the guts to tell an athlete that you shouldn't be doing that and it's not right and it hurts you. That's the problem. So, yeah, well, and then say this. So if we allow kids to play football, play lacrosse, play any sport with THC in their brain tissue, under the influence of marijuana still, because it's in there, right? It doesn't leave. It's in there until anywhere from 30 to 60 days. All right, it's in your central nervous system, and we're going to put you out there. Do you have liability for him? And if he gets hurt, is there liability involved? And the answer from any lawyer is yes. But here's the better part. So are we going to allow kids to go out in the field drunk? Or have a few beers before they play a game? Are we? You can't. Because if they get wiped out because they're under the influence of something and it's a depressant drug that shuts down brain activity, shuts down brain function, now how are you going to prove it? How are you going to prove a kid's not out there under the influence of something? Would you put a kid on a lacrosse field that's stoned? No. Right? Or a hockey into a hockey game stoned or drunk? No, you can't. They can get hurt, even if they're not rookies, even if they're highly functional users. So that's where we are with this kind of a situation. And I'm not going to get into it philosophically. People are going to have to figure this out for themselves. But can you imagine WADA? Raise it to 50. They raised it to 150, and now it's already done. And there's certain sports where it is rampant already.
Well, I just go back to what you said earlier about a parent's toolbox. You know, I think that really, from a coach's perspective or a teacher's perspective, is the thing that I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, kids think they need it.
Yep.
Either to be cool or to make their stress and anxiety go away because they have a lot of pressures going on in their lives, or, you know, to make them happy. And in some cases, like with the stimulus, I think they perform better on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, again, I think it's scary in terms of where it's going, but how do we provide them with the tools, and how do we get those tools across in a way that's going to make a significant impact?
And there's kids who have huge deficits in the home, and no guidance, and their parents don't have a clue where they are or who they're with, and you know, like there's another example, and I've seen this in more than one place where who for the most part do athletes hang out with? Hopefully athletes, because if they're with the other crew, then you really got some problems, all right? So, but there are kids that play in other groups where you have a kid who's a really good athlete, but he hangs out with kids who are total druggy party culture kids. I've seen it. And I've been to schools. I went to a school a couple of years ago, and I won't even name the state, and I got there and I said, how's your sports, how's your school? He goes, we got some problems here, man. And I said, like? And he goes, you know, some of the best athletes in our school are some of the biggest druggies in this school. Plain and simple. And I looked at the guy and I go, that's a problem. Because what you need to do is you need to do two things. One is you have to have youth-driven interest in a program. If it's not youth-driven, it's going nowhere. And when you see the examples from Barrington and Cody, and where there's models now from a poor school, a rich school, it doesn't matter what the dynamics are in the place. You can find those kids that are a positive example, but it's not that they just stand over here going, well, I don't do it. That's worthless to anybody. You got to take those kids, find other kids that are on that page, and form for them their positive group that actually mentors younger athletes that come into your school and keep them from crossing the line or crawling over the fence. And that takes time. None of it happens overnight, but it's a positive culture in your school. It's like, what are you going to do to offset all these negative things? Because all I see now is it's just like this, the pill mentality is the Band-Aid mentality. This is a gaping problem for today's kids, and all we're doing is we're going like, well, you know, hope they're okay. You know, there's not a logic model that people have come up with. Well, the best logic model is that the kids have to take ownership of it. And I think you can find that in kids. It's buried under more layers than it was with kids in our generation. All right, it's like saying this to somebody. John, why didn't you ever smoke marijuana? My mother and father, let's start there. You know, my dad was a great coach and a great athletic director and a great father. And he told us when we were young men, you know, and I remember my father saying this when I was 12 years old, and it's a personal story, but I'll tell it, and I'll never forget it. I was 12, my brother Jim was 14, my brother Bill was 10, and my brother Bob was 8. And we were all a state medal winner in various sports in New York State in our high school careers. And my dad said, you guys have to live your life different. He sat us down, he said, I want to talk to you about something. He said, you guys have to live your life different because of what I do in this town. And I'm going like, I'm 12 years old. But you know what he was saying? I'm trying to help and tell other kids what to do. And you guys have to really be an example of what to do because I'm the one out telling people what to do. It's no different than saying this. I'm going to tell a kid not to do something, then I'm going to do it. You know, if you're a preventionist in here or a cop in here and you get a driving while intoxicated, how's that going to look? Or you're head of a school, how's that going to look? It's not like the mayor of Toronto. I'm just kidding. You're going to have to answer to some people, and a lot of people are going to lose a lot of respect for you and a lot of faith in you, and you can't change it after it happens. You can make excuses, but you can't change it. And I say to kids all the time, I'm not here just to give you a science lesson, guys. I'm trying to be here to have you maybe think about this, and the next time you look in the mirror, think about the way you're living your life. Where is that discussed now? We sort of get kids to these teenage years, and then we sort of just go like, oh, they look like, I guess they look like they're doing okay. You got to continue that guidance, man, up to age 21 and beyond. And I feel so sorry for the parents that just don't realize that this is the time that you don't let go of the reins, man. You grab on for the buck and bronco. I mean, this is the most turbulent part of your life in all respects, and just that all of a sudden these parents that just go, hey, and how I can go back to my exciting life, and they don't mean that, but like they don't get it either. They don't realize that, man, this is the most important time of your life to know everything you can of what's going on with your kid, down to Facebook crap if you have to. And it's not spying. It's it's not, you're not ready yet for your kid to be your best buddy. You're the mom and dad. I mean, just talking to that guy last night, I mean, I heard about your parents. I mean, he just said, man, really good people, and I mean, I'm glad they're coming here to talk to you today. I mean, it's every time somebody says, your dad was such a great coach, and it's emotional, man. You feel like, yeah, at least my father did something with his life of value. Well, that's all I want to live my life too. And same thing with you guys that want to be with kids, man. That's what you have to do. You can't just because society's going the other direction, I'm not giving up. I mean, these people write stuff to me, oh, what can we do? And they got, where's your guts, man? You got to fight for kids. And fighting for kids is every time you see something that's not right, it's not about confronting it, slamming them. It's behavior of concern. Hey, man, I'm worried about you, and I'm going to tell you why I'm worried about you. If you would just teach your coaches and your teachers the 7-step behavior of concern process, which was in New York State's program and probably the only thing we kept in the whole previous program that was Life of an Athlete, which was called Action on Target, and he was involved in it before I got involved. Once I saw that behavior of concern process, I said, this is how you, in a positive way, confront a negative thing that you see in a young person without building a wall. You build a bridge to them, and you're offering your hand saying, hey, man, forget hockey or lacrosse or whatever, or rowing, man, I care about you as a young person. I'm seeing something that really I'm concerned about. And then you have to be specific and tell them, and then you have to confront it and say, well, and then you have to let them respond, and that's the hard part because sometimes they just sit there and give you the silent or look at the floor, look at the wall. And we were taught during that process, as long as it takes, you just sit there. Just sit there and wait for an answer. And maybe they won't give you one, but you say, okay, well, I'll tell you how this is going to go. I'm your coach, and this is my program. That's not going to float in my program. So if you want to stay in this program, you're going to have to make some changes. Are you willing to make them? Then you got to be ready right then and there to tell them what you want them to do.
Just as you were going into, I think those two things, as far as the most important things you tell coaches, is, that, and then you add in the restorative justice piece. And restorative justice piece is basically
Educate, correct, restore process to get back in.
and
And it might not even be a suspension, or it might be a game, or you're going to have to make some changes, man, and I better see the changes. It's like when you're coaching, you have a kid with attitude. You address it real quick, or the whole group's got an attitude, right? I mean, those are coaching skills that, I'm going like, okay, we got our coaching. You have a very structured coaching education program in Canada that we don't have in the U.S., and we've tried to make up for it in some state coaching ed stuff, but I mean, it's lacking. And coaches don't have the skills, just like a coach isn't a social worker. A coach isn't the dean of punishment. A coach isn't a chemical health expert. Just like a coach isn't a psychiatrist or a sports psychologist, but you have to be. Otherwise, you can't help the kids you're trying to help. And we actually have told coaches now, in this educate, correct, restore process, for anything, you run the kid through a positive experience to maybe hope that they change. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll go out and make the mistake again. But it's better than just thinking that they're going to figure it out for themselves. They're not. You're the adult. And it's positive effect on your school climate. And it's not just for athletics. It's for everything you see that's not right. Character issues, drugs, pot, alcohol, insubordination. Kids, what are you going to do if a math teacher comes to you and says, hey, you won't believe how your star player acts in my class every day. That's your math class? No, you're going to say, I'll talk to him. but you got to do it in a positive way. And I think a lot of adults that deal in youth venues, they don't know how to do that. And our process, if it has anything to do with the law, has involved school resource officers or the cops or whoever can come in and talk to them about the legal ramifications for their behavior. Who better to talk to it about? I'm the AD. Am I going to tell you how to get off? Smoke, why you're smoking weed, and give you some ideas for how you can come to grips with the issues around it? No, I'm not a chemical health expert. I have to have somebody who's a point person that can deal with that. Just like if I'm conducting an investigation of who was involved in a crime or underage drinking incident or possession or whatever. I'm going to do that investigation after I went to school for criminal justice? No, I don't have those skills. So who am I going to involve? I'm going to involve people who do that for a living. I don't want to deal with it. I'm going to screw it up, and then I'm going to have to answer for it and get sued, right? So, I mean, we've come up with some pretty incredible processes and even things to engage parents and, hey, look, none of us know this is good for a young person, and what we need is your help to support a program that will help kids make better choices and decisions. Is that alarming or disturbing? No, that's you should be signing up for it immediately. And you can even go as far as to say, you know what, we already have people trained in this program and we have unlimited free materials to do this. And everything from media campaign down to codes of conduct, well-written codes that actually, when a kid goes through it, if you want to spend the time to go through it with them instead of, hey, there's some rules you all need to know about, and here, read this, it's 38 pages long. No, you just tell the kids, here's 10 things you need to know if you're going to be a student athlete at the Hill Academy or Niskayuna or anywhere. And these are non-negotiable. That has to be said, because you're going to have people who think it's negotiable, or they'll sign it until their kid's in trouble. You know all about that one if you're in any administrative role with anybody. Story all changes rapidly. Margaret, did you want to say something?
I was back to something you were saying before about parents. In the youth behavior needs assessment that we did in Rensselaer County, one of the questions was, have you ever ridden in a car with somebody who's been drinking? And we were really confounded by our results because 6th graders had the highest percentage of kids who'd ridden in a car with somebody who'd been drinking.
And it wasn't their friends driving.
And the other night I was out to dinner with the superintendent of another school district and her husband and their 6-year-old. And they both drank, and then they got in the car and they drove home. And parents don't realize that they're role modeling getting into the car, and then the kid becomes a junior and a senior and their friends are drinking, and they've always gotten in a car with mom and dad.
Learned behavior.
And it's like a teachable moment for younger parents of younger kids. Because we put the data up there and we said, isn't this strange? And these middle school parents were sitting there going, well, who are they getting in a car with? And it finally dawned on them. We're the ones role modeling drinking and driving. And they weren't drunk. I mean, I'm talking about having a beer or a glass of wine. A kid at 12 doesn't know that you don't know that. And there are all these things out there that for that toolbox for the kids about behavior that the parents are role modeling.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, let's do this. Let's break for lunch. It actually gives you an extra 10 minutes to get ready for lunch, and then we'll take a full hour for lunch, and then we'll be back in. So we got. Let's come back in at 1:30, and I'll introduce you guys to the people from National Sports Academy.